Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for Hatchery 101, Recruitment and Training, a 60-minute webinar sponsored by Oxyguard Pacific. I'm your host, Shahalis Newbound, Digital Media Coordinator at Annex Business Media, publishers of Hatchery International Magazine. Today's webinar features a panel of industry experts ready to share their ideas and techniques to building a great operations team. It's my pleasure to introduce our panel's moderator and someone you may recognize if you attended a previous Hatchery 101 webinar, Ron Hill. Ron is the founder and CEO of Velocity Aqua and has a strong background in hatchery operations, aquaculture education, and aquaculture content. Before we begin, I'm just going to take a few moments for some housekeeping items. Today's webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording, which will be closed captioned, will be sent to everyone who registered in 24 hours. If you have any questions for our panel during the webinar, please type them into the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. We'll do our best to get to every question today. Now, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Ron.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second installment of Hatchery 101, focused on recruitment and training. This webinar is brought to you by our friends at Oxyguard, specialists in measuring and monitoring equipment. The diverse nature of aquaculture farms and facility presents many unique staffing challenges. It's very well known there's a major shortage of available aquaculture staffing. This shortfall adds a competitive nature to recruitment in aquaculture as companies must compete against each other to attract employees. Attracting, recruiting, training, and retaining staff have become vital considerations that companies must address or risk losing staff and running shorthanded. For today's session, we have gathered three aquaculture professionals who are going to share some of their thoughts, techniques, and experiences with training and recruitment to help attract and keep workers. Instead of me introducing each panelist, I would like each panelist to introduce themselves, tell us about their organization and their role, and get us started by telling how they were recruited and how they got their start in aquaculture. I'll throw it first to Ben Normand.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ben Normand. I'm currently working as the operations manager with PEI Mussel Farms in Prince Edward Island. I got my start in aquaculture after my degree. I went and did a postgraduate certificate in aquaculture at Fleming College in Ontario. And from there moved to New Zealand, where I worked with a couple operations before settling with a firm called Acroa Salmon on the South Island, a marine Chinook grow out operation. From there, I became a skipper with them and then moved into more of a compliance manager role and eventually made the shift back to Prince Edward Island to work with a mussel firm here and now find myself at home in the new operation here as well. So it's been a bit of an odyssey, a bit of an international journey, but very happy where I am now.
Excellent. To you, Leah.
Hello, everybody. I'm Leah Stoker, and I'm senior recruiter in U.S. for aquaculture talent. I have been with aquaculture talent for about 2.5 years now. When we came to the United States from Norway, we do have a couple of other offices there in Europe, and we work pretty much all over the world, recruiting great talent into the industry. Prior to that, I did a lot of career counseling and coaching. I've been a recruiter for many years, over a decade. And prior to that, I did study aquaculture, which is a little bit of me out of high school. I wanted to be a fish farmer. And so, taking both of these loves of mine, aquaculture and recruiting and working with people and companies, business, I love what I do, and I just really look forward to expanding on all of this today and going forward.
Thanks, Leah. Jeff, our third panelist, please introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Hatchery, and I am the director of the Lucas Pride Marine Institute in Seward, Alaska. And we do a lot of different things there. Part of our operations is shellfish hatchery, where we culture oysters and gooey duck clams for the aquatic farm industry. And we do shellfish research enhancement projects on little neck clams, butter clams, cockles. We also do life history studies on abalone, sea cucumbers, purple hinge rock scallops, and we've done blue and red king crab and a lot of other species. We have a full-fledged oceanification lab that we have continuously monitoring and do samples for 15 different communities around Alaska. And we have a harmful algae bloom lab where we can make sure that study the densities and the prevalence of harmful algae blooms around South Central Alaska. So we have about 10 employees at our facility. We're actually operated by an organization called Chugach Regional Resources Commission, which is an umbrella natural resource organization for South Central Alaska, which does more than just Aleutian Pride Institute, but involved in subsistence and personal harvest rights, wetland surveys, food security, that sort of thing. I came to Alaska over 40 years ago. I spent 20 years in the salmon enhancement trade, working for private nonprofit ocean ranching operations and fish and game, and having been involved with the Seward operation for almost 20 years now. So I look forward to sharing some of my stories. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We'll get started with the meat of the questions. First question to you, Leah. With the market for staff so competitive, how do companies distinguish themselves to attract personnel?
That's a great question. And, you know, it's to attract great talent, you know, it takes a great organization, it takes great leadership, it takes great culture, it takes, you know, others that are aware of the benefit of working with you as a company. So, you know, companies that do the best at attracting others are going to put themselves out there. They're going to make others aware of the industry, sharing the industry, being transparent about their own company, treating their employees well. And so their employees are also, you know, out there talking about, you know, the benefit of working with a particular company. Just doing those kind of things right. You know, allowing your employees to feel valued and giving them the benefits that they're looking for and the opportunities for growth is one good thing. But, you know, also just being a company that's out there and making others aware of the industry and sharing what you're doing and being engaged in that way. I think that is a great attractor for great talent.
Thanks, Leah. Jeff, your thoughts? How do companies distinguish themselves to attract personnel?
Well, actually, our staff has been stable for quite some time, and we're in the process of doing the expansion. So we're in the middle of the process we're talking about this morning. Some of the things that we are faced with is uniqueness of living in Alaska and the environment. We don't have a lot of cohorts, both in Alaska and in the US, to find people who would fit into our operation. And so we rely mostly on outreach and word of mouth, people who are in the fraternity of shellfish aquaculture or marine sampling program. Our goal is to attract good, competent people to build a good job around based on their interest and skill set. There'll be things, of course, that are part of the team that they participate in, but we want people to be excited to come to work. We want that sort of atmosphere where the workplace people are excited to be with one another and excited about all the different projects we have. Every day is different, so it's an attractive place. However, it's hard to sell that story because we're so remote.
Ben, your thoughts?
I think they both touched on kind of what I'm thinking here as well, which is that, you know, you can do really simple things like increase the wages or offer benefits and stuff like that. But oftentimes your competitors, you're competing in for a very small labor pool, especially in an area like, for example, Alaska or Prince Edward Island, where you just simply don't have that many people to draw upon. So competitors are really quick to match or exceed those sort of very straightforward and almost simple measures you can take. Where I found the most success and where you stand out is, in fact, offering the sort of intangible benefits in the form of, for example, being a very flexible manager for your staff, understanding that what's going on in their lives and how you can accommodate that while maintaining your operation. I've had a lot of success in operating that way and listening to the staff about what they need personally to make the job work. And that's often I find what people are looking for, or what helps you stand out and your operation stand out, is if you're running your operation in a way where you're sort of not totally people centric, but certainly placing their lives outside of work in a position of high value in terms of how you organize things. Then that word of mouth spreads and people say, hey, you know what? I really want to go work for Ben Norman because he kind of understands what's going on and tries to work with you to make it work. Right. So I think they both really touched on that. And I think, like I said, the intangibles is where I've seen the most success in hiring.
So Jeff, where do you look for new talent for your aquaculture company? You touched on it just a bit.
Most recently, I began to be more active into attending meetings where there's meeting boards. But again, travel's not that easy from Alaska. I mean, it's easy, but it takes a lot of time. Typically, it's a day there and a day back, plus the time of the meeting. So you just can't go to every meeting recruiting. But while there, I talk to colleagues. I make looking for some folks that they might think that would be good for whatever I'm looking for. And so it's kind of outreach behind the scenes, but I just want to touch with what Ben said there too. It's the intangibles, what is good, the flexibility. I basically tell my employees, I don't care when you work, I don't care, what your hours are, what your job is. If you get that done, that's your responsibility, and I'm not going to be looking over your shoulder. And so, of course, we do the training and we do the follow-up, but for the most part, people are independent because Ben's right. Quality of life is the most important thing to make for happy employees. So the outreach for us is really just to attend meetings, to look for people who we come across through research projects or some of the aquaculture production projects that we have going on. And I don't use the word poach, but we also sometimes we tell people, hey, there's an opportunity here that you might consider.
Ben, your thoughts?
Yeah, Jeff Salt's touched on something there for sure. It's getting information about your operation out there is sort of a natural lure almost, right? Like, what we do is actually pretty fascinating, I think, for 95% of the population. But, for example, at my time in Acro Sam, we did a public perception survey of, talked to stakeholders in the area, said, hey, do you know what we're up to? What do you think of the operation, et cetera? And honestly, the bulk of people were like, I'm kind of interested to know more because I really actually have almost no idea what you're up to out there. I just know you're doing something, right? And we found that the more education we offered about what we're actually up to, the more people actually responded quite positively. And I think, one way that I'm kind of looking at trying to develop a strategy around informing people is with the use of social media, is talking about what are we up to on the boats every day? What does mussel farming actually look like day to day? So not only are you kind of dispelling any myths that might be around that work, because the nature of work in this industry has changed dramatically over the last 20 years in terms of the physical toll. It's gone down quite a bit. It's actually become a much more easily sustainable career for a lot of people. But it's just a matter of getting that information out there and getting in front of people and letting them know what you're up to. So a lot of times it is going to these sort of public forums as well. And again, social media is like, I've had young people in the room. I gathered some young people that worked for me at the last firm and said, you know what, if you were looking for a job tomorrow, where are you looking? Right. And they said, not the newspaper. They're not looking in these normal job ads. And, those are great ways to get people kind of through the door, get resumes on your desk. But it's a matter of finding the people that are actually want to give it a fair shot and try. Right. So, and they all responded. If I saw a job ad on Facebook that explained exactly what you're up to and what the benefits are working here, they said that they would respond more positively to that than anything. So I think that as media consumption changes through the generations, you need to kind of keep up in terms of how you're getting your information out there as well.
Leah, your thoughts on where you look for aquaculture talent?
Everywhere, under rocks. No. Well, I mean, you know what? The bulk of my networking. I mean, I'm a recruiter all the time, so that's what I do, and I utilize LinkedIn a lot. I network with people, even if I mean, off of LinkedIn, you can learn about somebody. You can reach out to them by messaging them if you want to know about what they're doing, a company, or just interested, whatever. And most people are going to reply out of the instant messaging part of LinkedIn. And I have been able to engage with so many interesting people out in the industry. And when I find some company that's interesting, exciting, or a person that's out there that has these, skill sets, I reach right out and I speak with them. And so I utilize that a lot. And I just find that with that platform for engagement, utilizing that platform for engagement, that it's a quality place to go to network and be able to have access to these professionals that are out there in the industry. And and with a company, well, we also have We Are Aquaculture, which is a platform on LinkedIn that we utilize, and we highlight and spotlight talent in the industry. And so even going through interesting things like that, or seeing a person that's out there working in the field, and saying, wow, this is a very interesting person, they're doing interesting things, I can go and I can engage with them, through networking easily. That's another level of engagement that that is allowed to us by utilizing platforms such as this. It's at our fingertips. So that's pretty much as much as I'll say about how I recruit. But we do have to look under rocks. We do have to look everywhere. But paying attention to professionals, all the professionals, not just the ones that are the best of the best and all of that, even those that are just getting going, paying attention or being interested in somebody that's just out of school and, doesn't have all those skill sets yet, hands-on skill sets that we're looking for, engaging with them and mentoring them and bringing them up and being interested. We might not need them today, but in a couple of years we might, or we might know somebody who does. So, it's just a large networking that we are doing. So
Leah's right. You got to look under rocks. Just a quick anecdote was the other day I went to go look at a car I was maybe going to buy, and the guy who was selling it was 19 years old. And I started asking him, I was like, oh, what are you doing for the summer? And my wife goes, always going to try and hire you.
Yes. Never know where you're going to find great talent.
Okay, that leads us perfectly into our next question. How important is experience versus education in aquaculture? First one to you, Ben.
I think they both got large value. It depends a lot on what role you're hiring for, I find, and in what context. Like, if I'm hiring somebody to be a deckhand on a mussel boat, a large amount of experience is not really necessary, nor is education. They can be assets for sure. And I found that in that situation, of the two, a bit of experience actually goes a lot farther than, say, education, right? Just due to the nature of the work, right? It's quite physical. So, and working on a vessel all day presents a variety of unique challenges, including, seasickness, whatever. So people who come in knowing, yep, I don't get seasick and I like working physically and being outside all day, that experience is tremendously valuable for sure, because they've kind of already know, they've already overcome the initial hurdles of getting used to that work. Whereas if I'm hiring for, say, like, I don't know, hatchery tech, education is going to be fairly important as well, because they kind of understand the basic scientific principles behind the operation, as well as the importance in recording data, clear written communication skills, those sorts of things. So it really does depend. I mean, overall, yeah, it's tough. It really depends on the role for sure.
Leah, your thoughts?
It does depend on the role. I totally agree. And the types of positions that we look for talent for, are some of them are very well. Most of them are very technical and require education. Just from where I am, the types of roles that we hire for here. But you know what? Even with education, you have to have experience. I think that one of the biggest things is having soft skills as well. Like that, that it's kind of a place in the middle. Even if you are educated and you know this and that, and you have, this technical ability, or you're highly, experienced and you've been around the block and you know how to run that RAS system and, all of that kind of stuff. Without those soft skills and I think the likability and the eagerness to learn and the integrity behind who you are as a person, to come and join a team, it's that's more of a necessary thing, I think, as well, to have, because these days joining a team and being a part of a company's culture can make or break a culture, and that can make or break an operation, having the right people in place. So, I know I went around the experience education thing, but it depends on the position. But I think likability and culture fit is going to be something that's like in between and a kind of a foundational necessity.
Jeff, your thoughts?
I couldn't agree more, but identifying the soft skills is also somewhat hard to do through the interview process. But with us, we have several different facets, like I talked about. So in the actual hatchery production, a little bit of experience is important, but most of that could be trained. We have people that have come from other, like from salmon aquaculture, who bring those skills directly into shellfish or echinoderms and do just wonderfully. So that experience in working in husbandry, regardless what it is, field work, practicality, understanding the systems, pumps, water, those kind of things really are gained through experience, but it doesn't have to be a long time. A couple, 2 or 3 years would be helpful. But again, the right person we can train. As we get into our laboratory functions, we have to be able to perform ELISA tests and those sort of things, and there's some education required for that. But I consider ourselves applied scientists. So while we're doing production work, we need to keep track of record keeping and identify things that we do different, what improvements we can make and document those. But we do need our research components to be able to write, to be able to publish papers. So it depends on what function, again, what role, back to what both Leah and Ben had said, what role they form. Ideally, of course, you'd have an experienced person that's educated, but the education doesn't have to be a formal, master's degree or PhD for the hatchery work. Education can be life experiences and things that can get people through a day. Problem solving, which can be applied from any walk of life you bring to the job. The worst thing is for an employee to get to a point and not make a decision. I've always told my employees, if you make a decision that's wrong, it's my fault because I didn't train you properly. So I'd much rather you make a decision than not make a decision and stand still and look at something. But I mean, that's pretty important, and that's back to Leah's point about.
So how do you vet or evaluate someone who is just coming into the field or has no experience in aquaculture? First to you, Leah.
Okay. Well, I mean, again, how do I vet them? And it's difficult for me to answer this question because a lot of the people that I'm speaking with and interviewing are going to have that experience and education. But if I'm looking, let's say for an aqua tech or an assistant farm manager or something like this, then, it's, to me, it comes down to their really, what do they know? What is their eagerness to learn? How is their communication skill? Are they going to be able to, again, go on a site and be able to join a team, and be a viable, valuable piece of that operation at some point. So, it's really just about, I think, communication and that level of eagerness, to get out there and learn things. I meet a lot of eager people out there that are young or even older and are getting their education and want to get out there and go to work. And the ones that are really passionate and excited and want to learn more about the industry and just are hungry. I mean, those kind of individuals, kind of get you excited and and you want to help them to get to that next place. And that doesn't mean that a person who might be a little more serious about it and might not have that the communication skills that somebody else might have, that doesn't mean that they can't go anywhere with that. It's just it's like a comfort level, I guess, that some people have of moving themselves forward and a confidence level, right? And I think that even having those conversations with people who might not be there at that confidence level yet, and be able to share with them, how to get there, as a mentor, because I do mentor a lot. That helping them to get to that place too, to be able to go in there and be a viable part of the team. So that's probably it.
To you, Jeff, how do you evaluate someone with no experience in aquaculture?
Well, I think the most important thing is to talk to them, and find out their references, find out what their life history's been. It depends on what stage they are. If they're really young and perhaps just getting out of high school or early on, find out what they excel at, what their passions are. It does not have to be directly applicable, but you'd like to see that they have some kind of passions and they do well, and you see if that skill set will fit into what you have going on, what their hobbies are, and references. Just if they don't have, not going to have, a lot of these folks are not going to have a lot of work history or so they don't have a lot to lean on. But if they can articulate that to you and maybe share a passion for something, then you can see if that can work in your operation.
To you, Ben, your thoughts?
Yeah, they've done a good job covering it. It's really all in the conversation, honestly. And we talked about soft skills. It's almost a gut feeling half the time, really. It's you get through the process so many times with so many people that you kind of get a feel. I hired some young guys yesterday, actually. And I said to the boat captain, I said, look, they sound keen. I have about a 60% confidence rate they're going to work out, just based purely, I don't even know on what. I'm not even sure exactly, couldn't pinpoint it. But it's, small things like, are they on time for the interview? Do they seem excited about the job, or do they seem to want to just talk about money? Or it's what they're talking about, what gets them excited. As well, for us in our industry, it's a very, very seasonally rhythmic industry. So every fall is a really intense time while we're doing all our stocking, and the demands on everyone's time can be quite high, right? And that's balanced out with, through the summer, the demands are a lot lower. And so people need to know that going in. And for me in the mussel industry, that's been one of the biggest sort of telltales is, I'm going to say, as we go into the fall, you're going to be required to possibly work, 6 days a week at times. And how do you feel about that, right? And so again, you have to balance people's sort of restraints and demands outside of work as well. But how they react to a question like that, saying, you're going to a marine environment, things change very quickly. Can you be flexible, right? And it's not asking that question directly, because anybody can just say yes. It's more just proposing, this is what it might look like, and just seeing how they react, and then going from there.
Thanks, guys. Moving to our training and skills section, how do you develop a fish farmer or a shellfish farmer's mindset in new staff? First to you, Jeff.
I think caring, husbandry is observation. When you first work in a facility such as ours, there's a lot going on, there's a lot of stimulus. But through time, when you walk into the facility, you can tell if something's wrong. There's a sound that's different. There's something that's just not quite right. So all that stimulus kind of comes into a package. And that's just garnered through time. In terms of training, we do trial runs and we do certain things that really maybe aren't as critical of the processes to allow for mistakes. But I think the best way to teach is just to turn it over and let people learn, stand back, and rather than hover over them, you explain to them what to do, you let them go ahead and try, you work with them a little bit, and quite honestly, it seems to work really well. Mostly in part because we've had good people to date. We really haven't had to dismiss people. We tend to find where people best settle into their skill set and then nurture that. So the training part, quite honestly, with a lot of the species we work with are new and novel, so there's no cookbook, and I'm learning as well. And so if you learn together and encourage people to make observations, to make suggestions, it goes a long way, I think, and gives them ownership of the process.
Ben, your thoughts? How do you get a mussel farmer's mindset in your new staff?
Well, it certainly is. It's certainly important to get out there on the water for sure. Myself, I mean, I have a passion for the husbandry process. And so I feel often like staff are very encouraged to see, me out on the water, for example, working right alongside them, checking the crop and telling them exactly what I'm thinking about things as we go, right? Because that often sparks more questions. You get an industry like a marine industry, it's much like fishing, where you get a lot of sort of the old tough guy mentality. And so it doesn't necessarily encourage inquiring minds as much as it should. But if they see the manager walking onto the boat and pointing out things that I'm seeing and asking questions about what they're seeing, that tends to spark a lot of conversation and a lot of questions that they've maybe been holding and walking around with for quite some time. And it's quite interesting to see is that after that process, they'll often come to me afterwards and say, hey, listen, I noticed this after we were talking and I wanted you to know about it. And encouraging those questions and encouraging those conversations as opposed to just sort of a top-down approach of, do your job. It's more about lifting up their own queries and encouraging that questioning process, because anybody's going to learn. We can teach anybody how to tie a knot, but how do you tell how the invasive species population is growing over time? It's only by showing them what you know and encouraging them to ask more and more questions over time.
Leah, how do you develop a farmer's mindset in new staff?
Well, I would say that, the best managers that I see are the ones that have boots on the ground and are leading by example and, taking people if they need to under their wing, and being very inclusive and transparent about the operation. I mean, the number one thing on a farm is going to be the livestock. And so, creating that mindset in somebody that's what matters the most, is I think a quality and a great manager. And and again, just being that person, boots on the ground and being a mentor on site and looking for those training opportunities, if there's something that's lacking in an individual, and being patient, supportive, that kind of thing. So, and then also, I think I've seen managers be able to attend trade shows and take their staff with them, say to the aquaculture conference, and be able to learn quite a bit there from others, and encourage that networking in this small industry, because they can learn a lot that way, and maybe learn things that they didn't know before. And expand on the knowledge that they already have.
So what are the fundamentals to a good team on an aquaculture site? First to you, Ben.
Strong leadership is important on a boat, especially decisive leadership, but that's really not everything. It's very much what Leah said. It's creating an inclusive atmosphere where people are allowed to learn and make mistakes and are shown the right way how to do things. And that it does come down often to sort of, the captain of the boat, for example, but as well as the more senior deckhands as well. It's really all about just creating an atmosphere where learning is encouraged, as opposed to just, failing. As opposed to like a sink or swim, for example, which is maybe more of an old school way of doing things.
That's true.
Leah, your thoughts?
I agree with Ben. I think that that having that environment where you are able to well, it depends on the position. I mean, some positions can't make mistakes. But having a culture that is supportive of their employees, and a culture that is working together to learn every day, whatever you need to be learning. I mean, if it's about feed, if it's about the systems, if it's about whatever it is, learning about each other, being inclusive on site, being having these times when the staff can actually get together and be closer to one another, so they can feel supported, and so they can feel like they can be open and share if they don't know something. Not have an atmosphere of fear that if I do something wrong, or if I have a question, that I'm going to be chastised for it or let go or whatever. So that's how you keep your employees, and that's how you keep them happy, and that's how you attract talent, is by having that type of an environment.
Thanks. Jeff, to you, fundamentals of a good team?
I agree with both Ben and Leah on that. One thing I might add is to take ownership, ownership of the work that you do, and to be proud of what you do, but also reflect a culture of our organization at our facility, but also a broader organization, because those are the folks that we work for. Mm-hmm. And so, to be proud of what you do and do it correctly, and not just exchange time for money, but to take ownership. And I think Leah talked on something interesting about traveling with employees and doing things together. Communication is extremely important, but it's also extremely hard. When you have, in our operation, people who do a whole bunch of different things. We attempt to have staff meetings once a week, and also with our main organization. And that's difficult with scheduling, because it also often gets interrupted with things like this morning, right? I mean, I might have a staff meeting this morning because I'm with you folks. And so that's hard. And you find yourself sometimes having conversations with separate people, not everybody. And so that communication about what's going on is important, but it's often very difficult, and it's very time consuming. You have to balance, how much communication you have versus how much time you spend actually performing the task. So I think the ownership of what you do, be proud of what you do, and be, have the organization we work for realize that they have employees who are working on their behalf.
So what skills and traits are essential in an on-call or emergency staff worker? First to you, Leah.
Uh, uh, the ability to do so. I mean, that eagerness to get up and go, the ownership, like Jeff said, I mean, having ownership in what you do, that's so important. I mean, having integrity, so when you say you're going to do something, you will. When that alarm goes off, you're up. You take ownership in what you're doing. And I think that answers that.
Okay, Jeff, to you.
Interesting. I mentioned earlier my history in salmon aquaculture. When the alarm goes off, you do have to react, and you do have to have folks that are able to understand, diagnose problems, and have experiences with those systems. And they can only get that by going through emergencies and reacting. You can talk all you want about it, but until you actually have to do it, it's a different deal. And being analytical, trying to figure out what the most highest priority is to stabilize the situation. Again, it just takes time, and you can talk it through. Fortunately for shellfish, it's not near as critical. We have systems set up so that essentially, we can be without flow or power for mostly power is our biggest issue. Loss of power, loss of pumps and things like that. So we have backup systems in place. But again, it's to remain calm. And back when I talked about understanding when you go into the facility, or you can sense something's not quite right, and identifying what that is. And we have a maintenance engineer who's incredibly talented, and he happens to live very close to the facility. So there's lots of facilities you live on site and you have alarms and all that. We're not really dialed into alarms so much, but we try to have 18-hour coverage to walk through the facility so that there's not a big time lapse in case something is wrong. So I think people is just gaining experience in how they deal with, not a crisis, but a tense situation, be able to react, remain calm, know the procedures, go through it and solve it. And have backup systems so people understand that, if they can't figure something out, they can at least figure out how to keep things alive.
Ben, to you.
I think they've covered it quite well. And just in summary, yeah, great problem solving skills and flexibility is very key.
Okay, so turnover is notoriously high in the aquaculture industry. What strategies can companies use to keep employees for the long term? First to you, Jeff.
Well, I think a lock and chain works really well, just to give people, don't let them go. I don't know. We've been pretty successful at that. We have had employees. I think we've found niche for them. Try to take advantage of their skill sets. Hopefully, make them come to work, have ownership in the project that they're responsible for. I think that goes a long way. We have, we do our best with pay and benefits, and I try to explain to employees some of those costs. They realize that it's just not their hourly wage that costs the organization. There's a whole bunch more that goes into it. And, we strive to make, better pay for folks. I don't, I never really ask my employees exactly what the most important factor is, but I'm hoping it's not simply just the pay. I hope it's a job atmosphere and the future. And my longest term employees have watched the success of what they've done now as we grow. And hopefully they can share in the value that their hard work in the past has led to where we are today. Retaining employees, I think, is important because if you spend all your time doing that, then you're not doing anything else. It's really kind of a treadmill, and it's very counterproductive. And I'm sure people in the trade realize that there's only so many hours in a day, and recruitment is not a good way to spend your hours if you have to.
Ben, your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a few things. I mean, and one of them is certainly creating that sense of ownership, and part of that can be willingness to delegate. Actually, I've found is, so for example, if I need to track growth on a certain line where we've done something differently, right? It's just picking somebody who seems awfully keen in what we're up to and asking them to collect all that for you, right? Even though it's not necessarily their job. on paper, bringing people into the projects and the successes and letting them know what's going on, as well, the sort of intangible benefits we were talking about before in terms of being flexible as a manager. That goes an awfully long way for sure, because they feel more stable and secure when they need to ask you to have the day off for, I don't know, their kid's christening or something like that. They're not scared to come to you and ask, and they know that you're going to give them the honest answer. And also as well, it's important to get to know your people for sure, where like if I'm out working on the boats, I'm asking them about how's your wife, how's your kids, how did that hockey tournament go? It's trying to make a point of remembering what's going on with them, both in and outside of work. And that can go a long way in terms of helping them feel like part of the team. And if people feel valued, they're going to stay. And research is supporting this, that especially in younger generation now, a sense of fulfillment and value, being valued, is actually incredibly important to young people, whereas money was sort of the exclusive measure in previous generations. And I'm speaking very broad terms here, but that's becoming increasingly important over time. People will leave well-paying jobs if they don't feel valued these days, in more than they would have in the past.
To you, Leah.
Yeah, retention starts at the first day, right? So in past positions, I've had to work with retention in a big way for a large company that was having retention problems, and hence the reason they needed a recruiter to be 100%, on bringing in new people, because the cycle was just going around and around. And so in speaking and engaging, with these employees at this company, I came to find out that, it wasn't about the money. It was what Ben said. It was about being valued, feeling valued. It was also about what Jeff said about feeling included, and, and having ownership in it, and knowing what's going on in the company. I mean, sometimes managers or owners are reluctant to share what really is going on with a company. And I understand that you can't tell them everything, but, share the little things, share some things about the company to help them to feel like they are involved, and that they do mean something. They're not just a paycheck, walking in and out. And, I think that helps. Also respecting their lives. We spend a lot of time at work, and, half of our lives, our daytime lives, awake life, is spent at work. And so, that is an extended family. And so what do we do with our family? We're curious about them. We care about them. If they have, situations, or if they need, like Ben said, to go to a christening or whatever, or go be a part of their children's lives. I mean, allowing some of that is a good thing. I know that operations need people on the ground working, hours and hours. There's a lot to be done, and the employee needs to be responsible to all that. It's not just all about the employee. But, if you want to keep that employee, then, if they feel the ownership and they feel the appreciation, they won't want to go anywhere. They'll want to work for you, and they'll want to do a great job for you. And as an employer, ask for feedback. Put a survey out there, find out if you're struggling keeping people. Put something out there, kind of like, so how are we doing? And if there are chinks, here and there, then create a task force in your team, just a couple of people or a little team to go out and engage with the rest of them to really find out how we can do better. But yeah, I mean, retention is a big deal, and I think that a lot of companies can be better at it if they pay a little bit more attention to that piece. And some do a very, very good job, and others, they have a little room for to learn on their own. And those are hard lessons because it costs a lot of money to replace an employee. And anybody who's worked with us, aquaculture talent, knows that. I mean, it's tough to find great talent to fill positions. So the best thing you can do as a company is keep them.
Thanks everyone for your great answers. For the last few minutes, we're going to move to the audience question portion of the webinar. Our first question is from Michelle Stevens. How do you think we, those already in the industry, can build experience in the aquaculture industry, especially for the next generation that doesn't have those 2 to 3 years experience? Do you see it in mentorships, internships, or something else? First to you, Ben.
Yeah, I think it's just a willingness to take a chance on somebody usually is so mentorship certainly is probably the most key, I would think, really. Not only are they going to be able to have a chance to just experience it and know if it's for them. For example, I tell people when I hire them, like, this job is not for everybody. If it doesn't work out and you're saying to yourself that, I don't like being wet and dirty and outside all day, then that's fine, because it really isn't for everybody. So it's getting people in the door, offering them the chance to see what you're really up to, and encouraging them to be a little tenacious through the challenges, for sure. So I think mentorship is going to go an awfully long way, especially because, once again, I find these younger people, they value that sort of personal connection and sense of being valued more than the more sort of typical metrics.
To you, Leah?
Yeah, I think that people who are looking for that, yes, internships are great. Finding a mentor is awesome. I think that going to trade shows and engaging with others that are there, there's a great opportunity there. Also, don't fear reaching out to people who are in the industry. If you're on LinkedIn and you reach out to people, you engage with them, don't fear that, because there are so many helpful people out there. And a lot of times when you ask somebody, hey, can you share information with me, or I'm looking for this, or I'm wondering about that. There are so many awesome people in this industry that really would, they would take the time, a little bit of time, to help a person out. So look for those opportunities.
Jeff, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think reaching out is a good point. I often get calls, and I appreciate people just wanting to know what's going on and what kind of operation we have. But I would suggest for young people, don't be complacent in your job. If you have something that you really like, there's all kinds of experiences to gain in aquaculture, and there's going to be a point in your life where you're not going to be as mobile if you start to have a family or a relationship or whatever reason. So I would encourage people, even if you love your job, to maybe go try something else for a while, and broaden that experience. It's hard to do, but take that risk and do it while you're young, and then you can increase your resume and your experience to make you a much more valuable employee.
Okay, our next audience question is from Andrew Rose. How close are we to end-to-end automation of aquatic protein and plant production? And where does automation fit into a staffing model? First to you, Leah.
Pass.
Okay.
Let's go to one of the technical guys back here.
Jeff, you want to take a stab at it?
Well, automation, in the real sophisticated aquaculture operations, labor is a huge cost, and automation is real important. AI now is getting larger and larger, and so that's where all industries are going because of labor costs. For our operation, though, it's not applicable. It's still hands-on. We're not like a mass production factory. Everything is really hands-on. There is no automation. I use it, for instance, with algae culture, which is important for shellfish. There are, automatic algae production systems. They're expensive, but they're not really something that we require. There still requires skilled people, more skilled people actually, to operate those than are probably available. So in the future, I can see that maybe being more a factor, but I don't see that in the next 10 years or so, at least in our operation.
Ben, give us a muscle perspective.
I got to agree with Jeff on this one. It's something that is progressing in the muscle industry because historically it is a very labor intensive method of culture. So, it not just physically, not as only a very physical job, but you need a lot of people to carry out the work. But as it gets a little harder to find people to come in and work, and costs are going up for sure. It's something that everybody's looking at right now. But it's at a stage where it's such an infant stage right now in terms of actually putting solutions on the ground, that a lot of it is sort of task specific machinery design right now. So for example, like some sort of, conveyor system on a boat that can help you harvest mussels and do all the heavy lifting and put the mussel socks into the tanks on the boat, as opposed to relying on people to grab them and throw them in tanks. But you're still going to need people to work on those machines, right? So, AI mussel farming is, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, if you've seen it anywhere else in the world, it's not something that's even on our radar in terms of actually executing. We all sit there and think about how it might be applicable, but I don't know anybody who's gone that far down the path for sure yet. So again, it's going to be a matter of not replacing people, but you're still going to have a lot of jobs that need to be done by humans. Those jobs are just going to look different in the future.
Okay, final question, everybody. If you can give us a quickish answer. How does the industry raise interest and increase recruitment into aquaculture? First to you, Jeff.
Oh boy, I've been following aquaculture for a long, long time, and I think it's going to be the success. I think that the climate change is having people look at food security a lot more in the aquaculture industry, and so I think just the general trends in our day-to-day lives are going to have people kind of looking more towards food security and aquaculture and terrestrial farming, and how are we going to have food security. It's a lot of people, I think, don't understand where their food comes from, and they're going to realize pretty soon that it's going to be through controlled farming systems, both terrestrial and marine and freshwater. So I think that it's really changed in the last couple of years quite a bit. And so I think more people are going to look to aquaculture for careers and hopefully fulfilling careers.
Ben, 30-second answer.
Can you repeat the question for me, Ron? I'm sorry, I got distracted for a minute there.
Sure. How does the industry raise interest and increase recruitment into aquaculture?
I think it's just getting yourself out there, getting the message across about what you're up to, and offering or creating those opportunities to share your passion, because people love people who are passionate about what they do, and they want to hear more. And that and as long as you're shining that light, people will come.
Leah, the final word.
Yeah, well, we need to share our successes out there. So we do have a platform called We Are Aquaculture, where we do spotlights on talent. We do spotlights on companies that are out there, just sharing that information with our own networks, and expand your network, because, I posting those kind of things, say on LinkedIn. I have eyeballs, other people have eyeballs out there, in your network. And so if we share content and we continue to put good content out there about aquaculture, we can raise awareness and we can bring more people. We need more people in this industry. It's an interesting industry. It's an awesome industry. And we just need to share those successes and the really interesting things that are going on out there.
Well, unfortunately, time is our enemy, and we have come to the conclusion of this webinar. I would like to thank all three panelists for donating their time and knowledge to the forum to help us forward our industry. So thank you guys very much. A special thanks to our friends at OxyGuard for their sponsorship and support of this event series. Please keep an eye out for the next Hatchery 101 webinar later this summer. Thanks a lot and take care, everybody.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.